It is that time. It is Tuesday. We are live. This is PrimerTime on UCY.tv. My name is Michael, and I gave no interviews to Billy Bush 11 years ago where I said bad words.
Filthy words.
I'm going to tell
Nicholas.
you this.
I was going to say, I'm Nicholas, and I'm glad that nobody cares enough to record what I say.
No kidding, man. I mean, like 11 years ago, can you imagine just like the horrible things that were coming out of my mouth 11 years ago?
Dude, I can't imagine the stuff that's coming out of your mouth 11 minutes ago.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, and really the funny thing is Bill's cigar will be infinitely filthier than Trump's mouth.
Absolutely.
And I just don't...
So the funny thing is that everybody always talks about the war on women and the war on women's rights, and the way I look at it is this, is that you can stand up no more for a woman than by giving her the right to defend herself from anything, whether it be words, whether it be implements of death, or whether it be somebody who's just bent on causing them harm. You stand up for women's rights when you say, hey, you are empowered. And you are you are enabled by your own God to defend yourself and have the right to do so. You shouldn't, on the other hand, be like a member of the television show The View, a woman named Joy Behar, who calls President Bill Clinton's victims of sexual abuse tramps. So here's the thing. The war on women was this thing that, came up under Hillary Clinton many times, was that the vast right-wing conspiracy now was engaged in a war on women, when she is the same person who attempted to silence the victims of her husband's sexual assaults.
And what did she call that? She called that she had to cut down on the bimbo eruptions. And her best friend, exactly. James Carville, said that these women will continue to come out and harass the Clintons as long as you can drag a $100 bill through an Arkansas trailer park or a Little Rock trailer park.
Now you be a other than a Democrat and say that and see what happens. All hell breaks loose. You can call people deplorables. You can call them tramps. You can whatever it is. I will still say that Monica Lewinsky has more experience in the Oval Office than Hillary Clinton does.
I'll go you one better. I'll straight up say that Monica Lewinsky was a Mossad agent. I'll go right out and say that. Maybe she wasn't like an actual trained by the Mossad like a killer, but they have what they call Sayanim, and those are people who do the work for the Mossad. They're like useful idiots. They're American Jews or Jews of whatever country that will do their utmost to help the Mossad. And I have no doubt that that everything that they talked about, she went and she piped back to her rabbi, and that went into the little Israeli file on Bill Clinton's peccadillo. That whole Lewinsky thing is a great big mess. I think it was a huge distraction for many things that were going on that were far worse in the nation at that time with that administration, which I don't know if anybody recalls, but I firmly recall this, but Bill and Hillary are a package deal, and that has not changed at all.
Yeah, and it it's the same thing that happened during their campaigns and their co-presidency, I think is even what it was referred to back in the day. But you take a look at that and you say, really, what was she put in charge of? She was put in charge of healthcare by Bill Clinton, and she was an abject failure. So she was put in charge of the U.S. government's foreign policy by Obama. She was an abject failure. You ever wonder why it's the very first thing she talks about is travel? It's because she believes her itinerary serves as an accomplishment. She said it in the last two debates. I think she says, well, when you travel to 141 countries and you negotiate peace deals,
and I'm honestly,
peace deals does she negotiate that are still standing?
Not a one. Listen, all she's done is wreak havoc everywhere she goes. I mean, look, I truly think that she's not just liable for jail. I mean, I think a lot of the things she's done are straight up treasonous. I think this uranium deal that nobody speaks of is pretty damning. I mean, selling off 20% of the United States uranium stockpile, that's pretty damning.
That's treason. But speaking of,
mean,
I'm gonna drop something in chat. Spanish Mausers up for sale.
You know, that's an interesting item right there. I'm not seeing a whole lot of people that are pleased with the quality of these things.
Right. Well, you know, a lot of these end up coming from the different state armories from Spain that were producing these under license from Germany. And, you know, so we're talking guns that were quite possibly used during the Spanish Civil War. So these things probably have some good history behind them. It'd be very, very difficult to go and trace serial numbers without being fluent in Spanish and being able to go back to archives and stuff to figure out, you know, when the government produced these. But, you know, we talk about that often with M1 Garands or M1As. You know, you want to have a historical firearm that has some history behind it. The Spanish Civil War, you know, has a special place in our family history. You know, that's one of those things that is a battle tested, and you could say was the forerunner of the World War II German production Mausers that were being used by by what we would call the German army, which was the Heer, or what you would just basically a lot of them. You know, the different names by which the German army went by at the time. You know, that this is something that's usually made in the 8mm or the 7.92 by 57 caliber. Usually a 196 grain, or what we say 12.7 gram.
I think a lot of the Spanish Mausers were in 7.5 as well. A lot of the Spanish Mausers ended up being the same as a lot of the Chilean Mausers and Colombian Mausers.
Well, they started them off in the 7mm Mauser, and then what happened was they converted them to the 8mm Mauser.
And then when a lot of those Spanish Mausers, the earlier ones, ended up going down, and then they got converted into 7.62 by 51. But you know, I think all the good ones are gone. I think this last little batch that's coming out, from everything that I've read, they've got mismatched bolts, and when I say that, I mean like the numbers on the bolts don't match the rifle. The stocks are in fairly horrid shape, you know, like large gaping cracks and chunks missing out of them. Parts like barrel bands missing, and you know, parts that, you know, if you're looking for a rifle with history, you're probably going to have to end up getting the ultra select grade or something.
Oh, definitely, yeah, because
10 or
what's
15
going to happen is you're going to end up seeing stocks that are, you know, of varying qualities. Some of them not good. You know, the floor plate magazine is probably going to have quite a bit of surface rust, even down to it won't
have the metal butt plate. It'll be missing. It may be missing the rear sight. It's got all kinds of problems. And I mean, it may be a good shooter, but I'd almost be hesitant at that. And I think you're seeing that a lot with a lot of stocks. And I've noticed that with a couple of different importers. Samco seems to be one of them, and Century is another one. Century happens to import a lot of semi-automatics, and I'm kind of disappointed with Century's quality on a lot of things. I've owned a Century PTR, and it was kind of crappy. I ended up trading it. I basically put.
Oh, did we lose you?
Maybe,
okay.
No. I put about maybe 20 rounds through it, and I had a lot of problems with it. I figured out between me and a gunsmith, figured out that it was probably going to be about $300 to fix, and I didn't want to put that kind of money. And then I also had a Century FAL, which was built on an Imbal receiver, which is Brazilian, which is kind of interesting because as I became more fluent in the way the laws worked and everything, I found that the Century imported FALs coming from Brazilian rifles that were ex-military. They all had the third hole, right? So that means at one point that they were a machine gun. Well, the ATF regulations state that if it was once a machine gun, it's always a machine gun, even if like that hole gets filled in or it's somehow demilitarized to where it's not capable of full automatic fire or or a burst fire. So I don't know how those came in. There's literally thousands of them that came in like that, and I just wasn't happy with the build quality of Century stuff. Like it seemed like it was really everything was rushed and put and pushed together as fast as a dollar would allow.
Well, sometimes that's how you got to turn a quick buck.
I think it's more than turn a quick buck. I think it's sell garbage to make the dollar, and I think they've got more problems than satisfied customers. I guess I'd just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I'm not a satisfied Century customer, and I would not. I don't think I'd be very, very hesitant to purchase from them again.
Yeah. Oh well, there's the two main armories that were creating those 8mm Mausers for Spain were in Oviedo and then also in La Coruña, which is in the northwestern part of Galicia in Spain, and that's a pretty familiar place to you and I.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's kind of interesting. The Spanish Civil War was kind of a testing ground for a lot of different ideas regarding weaponry and tactics. And something interesting to come out of the Spanish Civil War was the predominance of the .32 ACP cartridge for handguns. And that led to basically a whole cottage industry of making what they called ruby pistols. And basically it was a small .32 automatic derived from a Browning design. And, the state of manufacturing in Spain at that time meant that a lot of these pistols were made by hand. And one of the interesting things is if you have one of these ruby pistols, you won't necessarily be able to find an extra magazine for them because a lot of them only worked with the magazines that was numbered to that gun.
Right.
It was a very different time. There was an arms embargo going on, and people make do with what they can do. It was before the advent of things such as the Sten and other like common workshop firearms that we see now in other conflicts. But it was a great big advance for a country that had less technological capability than others.
Yeah, and you were talking about a testing ground not only for ideas and tactics, but this is where the German army, the Wehrmacht and the Luftwaffe were trying out their own tactics for what they were going to be using in Central and Eastern Europe.
That's Germans, right. The Germans,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the Germans had a brigade, or what they called a brigade was really like an air wing of what they would say were volunteers, but they were German Air Force pilots who were flying in the Spanish Civil War to gain combat experience. So that way, when called upon to move into Poland and then into Russia, they would be able to go ahead and have the experience necessary to handle dogfighting and the different types of aerial missions that they would be called on to perform.
I had a lot of practice with precision bombing runs and techniques such as that. Yeah, that was that German band was called the Condor Legion, and that consisted of I can't recall exactly how many planes and men in the air side, but it also had a ground division as well.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that when you think about it, fighting war by proxy and using weapons that don't necessarily belong to you, that's one of the ways that a lot of nations have proliferated their weapons for sale in other countries.
And we've seen that in regards to our nation and how we do business. We've seen that in Libya with the WikiLeaks. It shows that after the Hillary precipitated the fall of Gaddafi, that basically all his armor is looted, and every one of those guns went to Syria in what they call a rat line to arm up ISIS. And those WikiLeaks also show that Saudi Arabia and Qatar are actively funding ISIS and aiding ISIS. And if Saudi Arabia is doing it, that means Israel is doing it. But WikiLeaks is not allowed to say anything about Israel. So.
Oh yeah, because whereas Hillary is saying, why can't we just drone Assange? Israel will do that.
Yeah. They're just waiting. I don't know. I think if you can't see it, and Hillary will be installed. There is no doubt. I mean, for Christ's sake, you got Jake Tapper on CNN saying vagina in the middle of the day. So
yeah, it's all over.
I mean, they must have played that clip of Trump, and I mean that's also like that whole clip is a very interesting thing, right? Because he's speaking to Billy Bush, who is cousin to Jeb and George Walker Bush, and nephew to George Herbert Walker Bush, right? So
yeah,
he's speaking to somebody whose family absolutely hates him. 11 years ago, things were different, and nobody also mentions that this groundbreaking news that was repeated at least 1,000 times on CNN. That clip.
You mean to tell me that a CEO believes that he can do or whatever he wants and get his way with women?
Well,
mind-blowing.
And honestly, I don't think he was describing what he actually did. But I mean, like, look at who he is, right? I mean, I'm not defending. I'm just looking at this logically, right? The guy says he's going to build a wall, and it's going to be the greatest, the highest wall ever. And we have the best and the brightest, and we're going to make America great. Everything he speaks is in hyperbole. So if he's talking to a guy who he's kind of trying to impress with who he is and selling his brand, and he's like off camera, I kind of have a feeling that the whole grab by the hoo-hoo thing is he doesn't mean actually pick him up like a six-pack.
Like
I think I think he was just being hyperbolic. I think he was, I can do whatever I want, and given like the outrageous example, I don't think he was actually saying that, he goes around and hook 'em horns. I don't think that happens.
No, I don't think so either. But
I mean, the dude's got a lot to lose if he was to do that. I mean, Gloria Allred's only a phone call away, man.
Yeah, and speaking of, why haven't we seen her being enlisted by Hillary to go after Trump for this? Any time there's any kind of any kind of litigation that involves a woman being wronged by a man, Gloria Allred is right there. Why hasn't she been involved yet? Is this case not generating enough publicity for her, or what?
I think Gloria Allred is shady and shisty, but I think she's hip to the real game, and I think that she knows that even though that Hillary is going to be the installed one, I think she knows that enough dirt is going to come out about Hillary that she'll be tainted if she. There's going to be a lot of people that fall after Hillary because look, honestly, I know I live in rural Texas, but I do travel outside of this rural area to far more populated areas. I have yet to see one Hillary sign, bumper sticker, poster, anything like that. I hear her commercials on Spanish radio. I'll hear a commercial for Hillary sometimes on mainstream broadcast news. Nobody's got a Hillary sign in their yard, and nobody's got one on their vehicle.
See, in my area, it's the opposite. Whereas in the city, you don't see Trump anywhere around because, again, major university and very, very liberal politics. I mean, for Christ's sake, my city council is entirely Democrat. But when you get outside the town, you start heading out towards like places where I go hunt or some of the countryside. You'll see a lot of Trump, Pence, and then the local candidates for office, whether it be for state assembly or the U.S. Congress. So you'll see a lot of that. The funny thing is that whenever you see the local politicians signs. So if you have somebody that's running for the representative from the state, on the Democrat side, you will never see that sign next to a Hillary sign. It's like they don't want to have any of her baggage when being associated with that party. They don't want to be even put next to Hillary Clinton, just even as a
I
sign.
think, yeah, I think that totally describes why Gloria Allred is not involved in this point. Other than saying whatever she says. I really think that Hillary's toxic. I think everybody knows it, and I think this whole outrage over Trump's potty mouth is
it's all it's manufactured. It's a non-issue. People understand that Donald Trump, as long as he's been in the public
is who he
eye,
is.
It's who he is, and you know what? People kind of expect this about him. Not saying what he did was right, or what even continuing to do what he's doing is right, but people understand that about him just the same way that people understand that Hillary is crooked Hillary, and that she does believe that she's above the law, and that she does believe that, as the leaks have shown, that she believes in one world currency, she believes in open borders, and she believes in globalization. So the problem is like I said, I was going to say that, I cast my ballot today because, you know what? I vote because, you know what? I go out and I go to places where people shoot at me. So, damn it, and I'm going to make sure that I put down the person that I don't want to be in charge of doing that to me. And, a vote for Hillary would send me right back out there. So, you know what? I don't vote for Hillary.
I think that's the greatest issue. I mean, I've really heard that. And I truly feel that all Trump really has to do, all anybody has to do, is not be Hillary, and that's a much more palatable choice to the entire nation. Almost, I'd probably say
the funny thing is, it's just like what I saw with the debates. Yeah, have you heard Hillary Clinton's stance on gun control?
Once or twice, and the emails also show something very interesting, that she plans to close the gun show quote unquote loophole, the online quote unquote loophole, and ban high capacity magazines by executive fiat order.
So what she says when she's actually talking in town halls and such is she always says this: I respect the Second Amendment, but. So, as soon as there's the qualifier there, it's like, hold on to your caveats, folks, because it's about to get real. We talk a lot about politics for the last couple of months because, we're almost at fever pitch. I think we're like 28 days.
Firearms are politics in the end. Firearms are politics. They have a wonderful sporting application. They have a wonderful hobbyist application. They're pieces of machinery. They're pieces of art. But in the end, they are politics. Because as Chairman Mao said, all power flows from the barrel of a gun. Stalin did not fear 1,000 voters. He feared 30,000 voters. He feared 1,000 voters with 30 caliber rifles. It's the gun is your last best way to say no, I do not comply. Yeah. And they do not like you having a way to say no, I do not comply.
Yeah. So hey, I'm gonna drop something here in chat, and I wanted to talk about this. 3 gun truths that the average shooter might not be able to believe, but are pretty true. So speaking of number 1, the thought is that you can't outshoot your firearm. Basically meaning that you, as the average or recreational shooter or even serious shooter, will not be able to shoot and have a skill set that is greater than the capability of the gun that you're shooting. Do you agree with that?
I disagree with that. I think it doesn't come with somebody who walks into the store and just buys an AR-15 off the shelf, spends the minimum money and gets a DPMS Sportical. I don't think and fires maybe 100 rounds a year. I don't think that guy can do it. But I think somebody who puts in a little bit of time, absolutely, they outgrow a DPMS Sportical, and they need different features. They need different capabilities and longevity of parts.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is accuracy. Let's talk about accuracy. Let's not talk about the need to
Absolutely.
modify a rifle. Let's say you go in and you pick up a Winchester, you pick up a Remington 700 or a Model 70, and you take that out to the range, and you start working yourself down, and you're getting to minute and a half or a minute and a quarter or 1 minute of angle. You're getting a pretty tight shot group. Are you going to be able to do that and do it to a point where your barrel is no longer attuned and is throwing throwing flyers?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of factors to consider in that. I mean, number one, is the barrel cold? Is the barrel hot? What's the ambient temperature? Because a hot barrel acts completely different than a cold barrel. So I mean, there's a lot of different factors to consider in that. But I think that somebody with a decent amount of training can actually, they can outstrip the capability of the weapon.
Michael, do we get you back? Oh, okay. Well, either way, folks, we're back. Sorry
I
about.
have no idea what happened. I think we mentioned some keywords or something.
No, you know what I'm thinking of is we've been having actually some bad weather out where I'm at, so this might actually been on my end because I'm sitting here staring at my DSL router, and it gave me that nice little red light that it likes to say when it says, "Hey, you talked about something controversial. You're off the air."
Right. Yeah, I did notice that your button went blank. You did not have the greenness of speaking. So
yes. So sorry about that, folks. That's one of the great things about live radio is that when you're live and you get the technical difficulties, you don't get the multicolored screen to say "stand by."
Right. All right, so let's get back to these gun truths.
Yeah. So what I like to say is, I don't believe that you can outshoot the capabilities of your rifle unless you are a world-class shooter. I don't think with today's modern firearm production methods that you can pick up a rifle off the rack and shoot better with your own skill set than the rifle is capable of performing.
I think it takes time, and it depends on what level of quality of the rifle you get into. I think
Michael, can you
those
hear
are
me?
factors. Yeah, can you hear me right now, Nick? Nick, can you hear me?
Okay, sounds like we lost Michael again. We'll try and
Can you hear me? Nick. God damn it.
Michael, did we get you back?
Yeah, I got you.
All right. I don't know what's going on. My router just keeps resetting. So, that's one of those fun Tuesday evenings where, you know what, just nothing's going your way. Because I'm sitting here looking at it and it's blinking at me like it's moving a million miles a minute. So
It's spinning wheels like the Roadrunner.
Oh, it's smoking. I can see it.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the next truth that we're going to get to is that optics matter more than the gun itself. What do you think about that?
I guess it depends on what you're doing, what you're using the firearm for. I know, like you and I have different uses. You like to shoot things at very long distances, and or not necessarily very long distances, but you're more into a precise shot placement, and I'm more worried about like home defense things. So to me, optics are not necessarily that much of an issue. To you, they are, and I know that you are fancy optics. So
yeah. So, like I said, for me, one of the key things that I always come back to is, you know what, the rifle itself with its iron sights will do you no good when you can't see those iron sights at night. So if you move up into anything that requires that level of shooting, whether it be nighttime home defense or even low light conditions for hunting or target shooting or whatever else that you're going to be doing low light conditions, I absolutely believe that optics matter, because if you are not to the level of proficiency with your firearm that your firearm is an extension of your hand, whether it be a handgun, or if your movements of cycling the action and loading around and firing on a rifle are second nature to you, you have to be able to process the information that your eyes can gather, have it be able to be discernible through the glass, and then be able to let your brain make the decision whether or not you need to pull the trigger. So having said that, the first scope that I ever bought was a 50 millimeter objective lens Nikon, and Nikon makes very, very good glass. And then I figured out that more light transmission with a larger tube and a larger objective lens make a whole heck of a difference, because that was a 1-inch 50 millimeter a 1-inch tube 50 millimeter objective lens scope. I moved up to a Zeiss with a 56 millimeter objective lens and a 30 millimeter tube, and it was difference between night and day in low light conditions. So I believe that one's true.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. For me, I can't give you the same background, regarding glass like you can. But when I had my first,
did we lose you, Michael?
No, can you hear me now?
Oh my goodness! Can
you hear me now?
Cool. Not.
Can
cool
you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you
hear
me?
One of those things, folks. Like I said.
Can you hear me, Nick? Nick, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hey.
All right. I think it's like a Skype update issue or something like that now.
Man.
You got me? I got you.
All right. Anyhow, what I was trying to say is, like, I don't know, I can't put my 2 cents in on glass because I don't use that much, but when I got my first set of real night sights, like the tritium ones that glow in the dark without, like, having to, like, hook them under a lamp for 6 hours or something like that, yeah, I'm really a fan of those. I think those are great.
Yeah,
but that doesn't really count as optics.
That to me,
so.
I was going to say that doesn't to me really count in the same realm as optics as it would be just sights. You have said in the past that it's more difficult for you to use optics in terms of looking through a scope than it is for me. So, that's one thing to consider, is that your own abilities to be able to be comfortable using glass, I think, makes a big, big, big difference.
I think you're absolutely correct. I have. I'm just. I guess I'm not as familiar with it and not as good with it as you are. But I demand that everything that I have has iron sights. I will not have something that does not have. No matter what you can do, put sights on. I will not have anything that's a flat top. Nothing that's shorn. I'm sorry. It's all got to have sights.
Yeah, because you're going to end up actually having to go out and put that stuff on your own, and that could be a little expensive. So
it is. I mean, even for an AR-15, you're looking at putting at least another $100 in on that bargain rifle that you got for $569.
Yeah, if you don't want to put the Chinese iron sights on that come from Sportsman Supply.
Yeah, the UTG or what is it? North Star. What's the other one?
Yeah, NC Star.
NC Star. That's it.
Yeah. So we'll hit the third one hopefully before we get kicked off again. Is that carrying a gun is not always going to be comfortable, but it should always be comforting. I say that one's false. I think that if you get the right platform, the right holster, carrying a gun should be comfortable and it should be comforting. Because if you're not comfortable carrying it, how comfortable are you going to be using it?
I agree, and I think there's many platforms out there that are comfortable, and now that's not to say that you're going to be able to pick that up for $200. It may cost you a little bit, but it's very, very comfortable. I'd definitely throw the SIG 938 in a quality holster into the comfortable category. Yeah. I if for nothing else, the North American Arms 22 mini revolver. That's 5 shots to get the fuck out of my way. I'm going a different direction, and that fits in your pocket. It's smaller than your keys for most people, and that's 5 shots. So I mean, the definition of comfortable, and I almost have a problem with articles like that, just because it's, I don't know, man. It's almost clickbaity, It's written from, okay, like something. The same thing would kind of get me is this mythical argument of stopping power, right? Like you got to have a caliber that starts with a 4 minimum. Well, what's stopping power is putting a bullet into somebody's chest, no matter what size it is.
Yeah, certainly.
You put a 22 into a dude's chest, and he's going to think real hard and fast about what he's doing right there. And if that's stopping power. Your ability to hit the target is your stopping power.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. No matter what you're shooting, if you're comfortable carrying it, I think you're going to be more apt to, number one, use it correctly and use it accurately.
Hey, listen, there's a question in chat, and it's kind of interesting, and it relates to this. What do you think about night vision? And I mean, there's all kinds of different night vision out there on the market, and then there's new night vision for the military and everything in between, and all sorts of different price points. I mean, you can get cheapy first generation made in China night vision for like $59,
and you'll also go blind.
And you will also go blind, get some sort of awesome brain cancer or something like that. I mean, all you got to do is look around for any Soviet survivors of the invasion of Afghanistan, because they all got issued night vision, and all them dudes are dead.
Yeah, definitely.
They all got like eyeball cancer, brain cancer, sinus cancers, all kinds of weird things. So I would say stay away from Generation 1 and probably Generation 2, like Eastern European and Chinese night vision stuff.
Yeah, I went ahead.
And then after that, it gets expensive, man.
It does. I went ahead and dropped in chat for the casual reference right there. The appearance in the difference between the different generations of night vision optics. You can get night vision optics from quite a few different manufacturers, like you said, varying price points from relatively inexpensive to, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to set up a second mortgage to get this. one of the
Well,
things that
some of that new stuff is $5,000, $7,000.
and what you'll see, one of these things I do is I check Craigslist to see what people are offloading, because times get tough and people got to offload stuff. In my area, there was a guy that was offloading, prior military issue, first generation U.S. night vision stuff. Okay, well, yeah, that'll let you, quotes, see in the dark. But is that going to be relatively good for accurate shooting? So, like, for example, if you got pigs in your area that are 9 times out of 10 going to be nocturnal, and you're going to have to be out there in the night hunting them, is that going to be something that you're going to be very successful with? You'll have marginal levels of success, but it's not going to be the same as if you had one of those second or third or fourth generation units. And likewise, you don't necessarily have to own them in order to be able to go out and use them. You can rent these things. Different outfitters will have these in their inventory, and you can test them out, and some of them will even let you apply a portion of your deposit towards the purchase. So it gives you an opportunity to use multiple different varieties, multiple different brands, and see what actually works for you. Because one of the things that a lot of shooters like to see is something that makes their target stand out to their eye, and everybody's different. I can tell you when I was using some of the first and second generation night vision equipment for the Army in the early 90s. We were, by then, I think we were largely second generation, getting ready to go into third generation. You could see, and it was green. Different shades of green, with the more intense light being like a lightish yellowish green, the less light being green. Then you had the opportunity to move to thermal. You might not necessarily need to go through the full IR spectrum. You may like white hot, you may like black hot, you may like the green, the traditional IR colors. Or I'm sorry, yeah, the green for the night vision colors. But what we're talking about in the differences of the generations, we're talking about the level of resolution and what you're going to be able to really discern. When you look at this picture that I dropped in chat, you look at generation 1 and there's a picture of a building. It's pretty fuzzy. You might be able to make out a window or a silhouette of a person sitting in the window, but you're not going to have a very accurate chance. Whereas you get to generation 4 and you're going to be like, whoa, yeah, I can see like individual panes in the window. So that's something to consider.
Yeah, that is, and then something to consider, especially when you're buying a used night vision, is the time on the tube. All of these devices lose their effectiveness over time with use. It's like you wear the tube out. And what I mean by tube is the image intensifier. And those wear out. And I don't know what the time limits are on them. And pretty much none of them have any kind of way to gauge the time on them. You have to take the seller's word. So that's another thing to look out for.
Yeah. Like I said, one of those things.
I'm really not a big fan of the low price stuff.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of YouTube, and quite often you'll see these different outfitters that are using, whether it's ATI or something else. Just the different manufacturers have different features that come with their scopes. Some of them have, auto tracking that will actually help you correct the flight path of your bullet and bring you back onto like a not a mechanical, but a battle sight zero within 1 or 2 shots. So that's something that's interesting, where a novice hunter might not be very, very well practiced in night vision shooting. You can become on target very quickly with that. So the scope adjusts to the zero of your rifle, not having to adjust the zero of your rifle to where the scope is, and having to be able to do it digitally is a big advantage.
Well, how do you feel about like laser bore sighters? It's the little laser module that's shaped like a bullet that you can chamber in.
Okay, so basically this
throws a beam straight down the barrel.
Right. So what the idea behind this is to mimic the flight path of the bullet. And as we know, the bullet doesn't leave the barrel in a straight line and hit directly to the target. There is some rise with the bullet. As it exits the barrel, it gets to the top of its flight path, gets to the apogee, and then starts its downward arc. So The idea is that at a certain distance, wherever that light is, you should be relatively close to where the bullet is actually going to pass. There's a couple different varieties. You could either have the one that, like you said, is shaped like a bullet, actually goes into the chamber and then rests up against, the inside of the barrel and projects a beam through the barrel. And they have the ones that you actually insert into the end of the barrel. And then there's a couple of different stabilizers, based on caliber, that will project the beam from the end of the barrel. I think what it is it's a good way to cut down on spending money in terms of probably 6 to 9 rifle shots. Does that make up for the cost of them? Maybe. You got to figure, each of these laser.
Well, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of money and that could invest in something like the Tracking Point or something like you were speaking about earlier. But you can find one of these laser bore sighters for about $15, and that's
yeah. Depending upon what you get, I mean, they're all simple. They're simple laser optic that are they produce I think it's a class 2 or class 3 laser beam, and it goes straight line distance to whatever you're doing. You got to know exactly where you're trying to bore sight your rifle to. You got to know what the distance you want to be zeroed at is. So for me, that's all dependent upon not only the caliber, but the grain of bullet and the profile of the bullet that I'm shooting. And again, once you select one and you choose that, you need to stick with that exact same ammunition for the entire time. Otherwise, you got to do the whole process all over again.
Right.
All right.
So,
and then, like you said, Cracker says that they're only designed to get you on paper. That's true in a sense. The laser bore sighter is there to get you within a relative distance of zero. I know a lot of guys that want to have that. They mark where they have 2 guys that set up, and they set up the rifle on a vise. They'll put the cartridge bore sighter in there, and they'll say, hey, I'm gonna put the tip of my marker right here. You tell me where that laser is, and they'll mark that portion of the target, and then they'll go back and they'll actually fire rounds and see how close they get to that. So that's one of those things that where it's designed to get you on the paper, but I know guys who actually get zeroed off of them.
That's pretty wild. And I mean, there's several different ones. The ones I'm referring to are $15. They usually come in a blister pack, plastic, or maybe a small little tiny cardboard box, like you get like a pocket knife in or something. I definitely wouldn't spend any more than $40 on one of those things. There are kits that sort of mount to the outside of the rifle and do account for the rise and the fall. I mean, there's like a little program that can be put in, and will help you zero a rifle, without firing a shot, depending on your caliber and your load. But those are expensive. Those are $600-700 right there at the very
definitely
beginning.
Well, speaking of getting zero, let's talk about some firearm safety.
I think that's a good idea. All right. First rule of firearm safety is every firearm is loaded until you physically and visually ensure and inspect that it is not loaded. Rule number 2 is keep the muzzle pointed in the safe direction at all times. Do not cover anything you don't wish to destroy. Rule number 3 is know what your target, know what's beyond your target at all times. And rule number 4, the most important rule, is keep the booger hook off the bang switch until you're ready to discharge the weapon. There are no accidental discharges. They are all negligent. And the only negligent discharges happen when you pull the trigger when you're not supposed to. So keep the
gun doesn't just go off.
It does not go off. There's not a whole bunch of Japanese Nambus sitting around, and pretty much all those Tauruses went back. So,
yeah, go figure. It's not a Samsung 7, folks.
That's interesting you brought that up, because I read that the defect rate on those Samsungs is something like 0.0016% of them have had that issue. And,
so it's interesting, because with that low, what you would figure is a relatively low occurrence. Samsung officially announced today that they were going to stop production of the Samsung 7 Note. It's done. They've said we are actually
that's interesting. Production. I've had a bunch of Samsung products, like Samsung phones, and every one of them has been honestly has been a really damn good phone until I destroyed it. You know, and I mean that's just because I'm difficult with phones, but you know, all of them, none of them failed to function because of a problem with the phone. They were all operator
Operator
problems,
error.
and honestly, right, and I think I also don't think you have to have the flagship model. Samsung's one of those companies that puts out like mid-grade phones, and I've got one of the Samsung mid-grade phones, and man, I'll tell you what, it's faster than any computer I've ever used.
Yeah, but you know that only lasts for a certain amount of time. I'm still rocking the
Yeah,
new
but
i.
it was $80. It
Yeah,
was $80, and I got unlimited everything. I got unlimited 5G internet. You know?
yeah, yeah. Oh well. So yeah, you know, here we are. We are. Oh gosh, we are just coming on to 10 days past the beginning of hunting season in my area, and no joke. Um, yeah, like I said, we covered it a little bit. I went to my stand on opening day, and I probably spooked out the only deer who have been back to that spot in the last 10 days by 2 minutes.
That's damn. You're gonna have to start setting the alarm and getting up when it's not comfortable to get up now.
Well, and see, that's a funny thing because I was actually going out with a partner. I was where I was supposed to be on time, and I ended up having to wait for this guy for an extra half hour. And had I gone out and been there, I would have been in the stand before these deer showed up, and I would have had something on the ground. So let this be a lesson to you. Don't wait for your buddies who are late for hunting. Leave them behind. Leave them
That's
behind. Just you know,
just
it's every
go
man for themselves when it's hunting season.
right. Yeah. Make them. I don't know. Jeez, that's rough.
So, in
Gotta
the
have
the next project is going to be that. In the meantime, we've got one member with a deer down already. So we are going to start getting ready for rifle opener, which for us is November 19th, and we are going to go ahead and start building some ladder stands because you know what, it costs about $100 something to get a prefab metal ladder, and you can put it together with wood for relatively cheap. And since
right.
we're not going to be on this side of the farm next year, we don't necessarily need something that is going to be more permanent. We can go ahead and take it down, whether it's by breaking it or whatnot, or just disassembly and then moving it somewhere else. You know, if we can get a pretty good 10 to 12 foot lift with some 2x4s and a pallet, hell, we might just do that.
So listen, you said that your hunting season, your rifle season opens up November 19th. I'll tell you what, I think rifle season nationwide could open up November 10th. I really do. I have a feeling that I got a bad feeling about the Hillary thing coming in, man. These email leaks about her view on gun control and
Well,
her
I mean, you didn't
desire.
need to have anything. You didn't need to have anything leaked. She wants Australian-style gun confiscation. That's
Right.
already been said. She said that to us.
I have a really bad feeling about what's coming down, and I think I think it's going to be one of those trigger points because there's really one thing that can polarize American voters, and it's gun control.
I don't think so. I think it's even less than that. I think what's going to polarize America is Hillary Clinton being the first woman candidate for president not getting treated fairly. Because just like she said, isn't it about time for a woman president? And that's
I
honestly, that's what this was the generation of millennials has been spoon fed, is that everything they have to be involved with has to be some kind of historical, precedent setting issue. Otherwise, they're not relevant. And think about it in your next interaction with one of these millennials or one of these subsequent generations of misfits that have been told since day one that they're special, they're important, that they have to Instagram and tweet and Facebook post every mundane bit of information about their lives. You take that away from you. Want to see a revolution? You shut down Twitter, you shut down Facebook, and you shut down Instagram and Snapchat. you're going to have a revolution on your hands.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the issue I've got with that, because you've got a great big percentage of these people who use those services, and they're very, very vocal. Anti-Trump, anti-old America. They're the progressive. But when it comes down to it, they don't own guns, man.
No, they don't own they don't own guns, but you know what they do own? they own their mommy and daddy's bank accounts.
I don't think that's going to help. I don't think that's going to help, because
we shall see.
I don't think the money's here to stick around, man. They put the Chinese money just joined the special drawing rights. That's something to be aware of out there for value shoppers.
You want to know who's the latest victim of not having gun control?
Tell me.
Kim Kardashian getting hijacked in Paris.
Awesome.
Serves her right.
I did see that she is considering increasing her armed security.
Has already done so.
That's it. Everybody, thanks a lot. Thanks for sticking around. UCY.TV rocks. Everybody, do what the song says. And then buy some magazines.